Hey everyone, this is Desert Sun Crypto. I'm your host, the Desert Sun. We're going to be talking about Gary Gensler today, chairman of the SEC, where he's been and where I believe he's going, and my thoughts on him being the head of the SEC. So, Gary Gensler, a little background. He's a Goldman Sachs guy. He worked there for almost 2 decades and then segued over into burning the reputation of having a part in regulation for two administrations. One, the last part of the Clinton administration, and he served as the head of or undersecretary for the CFTC for a while before moving to MIT, and then just recently at the beginning of the year being confirmed as the SEC chairman. So to walk back, I just want to go over and show you a couple articles and also hear from Gary in his own words, uh, you know, his perspective, his philosophy. So this was uh, the article that came out. Senator O'Kay's tough former regulator as market watchdog chief, and they're talking about uh, you know his appointment as the head of the SEC under the Biden administration. For a lot of us in the space, it was really no surprise that he was going to get tapped. I think what was surprising was his confirmation was 53 to 45, which again didn't show. It basically shows people voting along party lines, but Gary is probably and I'll get into it later, the only guy that really knows the crypto space unlike any other person that's been there before. Certainly more than Hinman and Clayton. But here's this is back when Gensler was chairman of the CFTC. Sorry, like I stand corrected. I think I said he was undersecretary. He's chairman of the CFTC. And here he is giving a speech at George Washington Law. I'll just show you the brief his response to the questions that's asked.
It seems like much of what you were talking about is to try to help the commercial users in the sense of more transparency, better pricing, and everything. Yet the commercial users fought successfully to get exempted from much of this. Can you explain what's going on here?
Sure. I believe strongly that markets work best when they're transparent, open, and competitive.
When we speak about regulation, I think a lot of people have the idea that it is too much government intervention, and it very well could be. Uh, but people don't think about the other side. If you look at some of my other videos, I've showed, um, two cases. One in particular is in Brazil, this scheme they had going on where there was basically companies posing as um, asset managers are selling Bitcoin, and people hacking into wallets. Uh, not having an intermediary is really going to change the space, and so yes, there has to be regulation. As much as I look at it and and want the wild west of cryptocurrency to keep going on. There's a lot of people that are going to get screwed in this space, and we see it happening daily in a number of schemes that happen. So, um, yeah, so here he's obviously talking about advocating for the consumer and wanting transparency, and this is 10 years ago. Now, here's an interview he had 3 years ago, and this was, um, uh, you know, Gary had left the CFTC and headed over to MIT where he taught. But here's his comments on crypto and regulation.
There's technology to help with custody, basically. And so do we need the same exact regulation around what a custodian has to be and do? Does that role even still exist?
So I would say
We do need rules. Society benefits from them in terms of custody. In essence, the rules of custody are don't lose a customer's funds, don't use a customer's funds.
But they're more prescriptive than that, right?
Yes, they're more prescriptive, but to use the example of front running, if you can programming an anti-front running regime right into the blockchain, that does not obviate the need to at least have a legal requirement that you have no front running.
Agreed.
But
True.
then you go into the appropriate folks and say, well, can this satisfy that goal? And you work through, and I think there should be accommodations for the new technologies. We've done this before. When the internet came around in the 1990s, there were a lot of accommodations. Some of them worked out reasonably well. Some of them had unintended consequences. We had something called the Enron loophole, where new exchanges, new ways to do electronic trading of derivatives or swaps, were allowed to stay off the grid, off the policy grid entirely. I'm not saying it's the only reason we had the 2008 crisis, but it was certainly part of the crisis. And looking back now, those of us, because I was involved at the time, should have done more to protect the public. Should have.
So Gary has a leg up more than anybody else. I got to hand it to the guy. He came from the private sector and wanted to serve the public sector at a time when, yes, there was uh, a a new industry moving in, it being the internet, and a lot of transitional uh, mechanisms happening. Gary knows that. He's been in the game a long time. Here's an article, actually. This is welcoming Gary, former CFTC chair Gary Gensler, to the DCI. So, Gary taught courses at MIT, and if you want, you can go on YouTube and type in MIT Gary Gensler. They do, have some of his lectures for free. It's pretty cool. You get to see him, a little, chatting it up with the students, a little lighthearted and light all around. But I actually ended up pulling up. I didn't want to pull up the actual lectures because you can pull it yourself. But here again is more from Gary Gensler. I did actually look up at one of the courses that he taught, which was blockchain and money, and this is from fall 2018. So can you imagine taking this course, fall 2018, blockchain and money, from a guy who certainly knows his stuff in today is now the SEC chair. But here's the clip that I'll play. Again, answering a question, and just familiarizing yourself with him and his knowledge in the space.
Sweet Green just announced today that it will begin accepting cash again after 2 years of banning cash transactions. What's your opinion on the increasing cashless economy, and should brick and mortar businesses be required to accept cash?
I think cash is going like the way of the dodo bird.
So more than anything that I wanted to show, and this is kind of flips it on the other side, uh, Gary sees the writing on the wall. He understands crypto, and because he understands it so well, he understands how critical it is to protect people who are moving to a system that they know little to nothing about. And I personally think that it's a good thing. uh, I'll wrap it up here soon, but let me show you the last clip. Actually, I did have one clip. I lied, of Gary Gensler, and here's him commenting on Ripple XRP, which this is this is put together January 2021. I think this came out later. This is Kevin Cage who posted this, but let me play this out, and I'll give you just kind of my summary of what's going on right now, and as Gary is the SEC chairman.
So one idea that's been around, it's widely associated with Ripple, but it's not only associated with Ripple, is this simple chart. What if I move fiat to crypto and crypto to fiat? This is called a bridge crypto or bridge currency. I can sort of say I can go from US dollars to Bitcoin or XRP. You fill in the middle and then move over to the other fiat, Mexican peso in my example. And might that take some cost out of the system? We have Sean's issue earlier of volatility. If the crypto is fluctuating a lot, that causes some issues. If there's a lot of cost or friction, because now you're doing 2 currency exchanges, not 1. I'm calling crypto a currency for this purpose. I know that crypto is not technically a currency, but for this moment, let me just call it, you have 2 currency exchanges, and thus you have 2 bid-ask spreads to pay. Just the market makers, you need to pay the bid-ask spreads twice, and you have some volatility if the middle crypto is moving around. But this simple diagram is a big part of what Ripple is trying to create with X Rapid, right? X Current is a messaging app of Ripple's, and it's competing with Swift. And it has some reasonable adoption. A lot of banks are starting to use it. But don't confuse that with another product, which is an interesting product that kind of does this, that goes fiat to crypto, crypto to fiat. So what problem, what pain points would this be solving if it worked in the cross-border? Anybody want to remind the class what Tom?
Well, this reduces the number of intermediaries. You don't have to have your bank engage with a correspondence bank, which engages with a local bank, which then it sort of...
All right, so it might, I'm going to say it might lower the intermediation because you still have on the 2 fiat sides a bank, a local bank and a bank, and to do the crosses, you need some market-making function, which in Ripple's case, they try to build into the application, and they have market makers to provide liquidity. There was a question.
So here's what I'm going to say, and here's why I have a really good feeling right now. First, let me say, I'm not a financial advisor. This is not financial advice. I don't want you to get flooded out of the market. I don't want you to get excited about what I'm going to say, but I'm just going to put it out there. And it's this. Gary Gensler is the right man, the right job, at the right time. Here he is in the last clip talking about what he sees is the advantage of XRP. Right now, the narrative is that this crypto experiment is just going to poof and gone, and it doesn't really have the buzz that it's having overseas right now. I think it is completely asinine that this isn't in every single news report, and it soon will be. And right now, if you're watching this, you're basically ahead of the curve. But you just heard the SEC chairman, who, let me remind you, the SEC is in a lawsuit against XRP, and he's laying out the validity of XRP. He understands it. So here's what I'm going to say. The regulation that was going to happen and that was released by Jay Clayton on the last day of his term as the SEC chair had to have been taken over by someone who knows the game, who's going to regulate it effectively for the consumer, but also keeping in mind the vitality of private industry, namely XRP. I do see light at the end of the tunnel. I have faith in Gary and the SEC. Yes, this lawsuit has just been the most aggravating thing from a trader's perspective. But I will say I do have a good feeling on what is going to happen here soon. I could be wrong. That's why, again, don't take it as a word. Do your own research. But I did want to share who Gary Gensler is, my perspective on what he is, and what I've looked at over the last year and a half. So, hope you liked the video. Please like, share, subscribe. I do list some of the handles for Instagram, Twitter, and not blockchain. Oh my gosh, TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. I've got my links in there. Show me some love. Thank you very much for tuning in, and we'll see you sometime soon.